Welcome back to the Farms in BC podcast. My name is Jay Jack, and we got my order here now, Sikon. And today we're actually entering the spring market here pretty quickly, and we really wanted to get into a few of the discussions regarding that, as well as some of the BC changes that are coming down the pipeline. We got a few things like the anti-flipping tax, we have the Airbnb changes, and we also got the increased density changes. So all these things and more, stay tuned.
Well, Nev, we're in spring 2024. It's here. How you feel about this spring in comparison to the previous years?
This year it's a lot better than it was from last year. Last year we were going on an incline of interest rates, and right now what we're seeing is there's a sentiment in the market that interest rates are going to be decreased here. Some people are saying April, some people are saying June. And I think there's a big anticipation of buyers that have been waiting to come into the marketplace. And we have seen them starting to come in already in January. In some sectors, we've actually already seen prices already start going up. And that sector is mostly the 5 to 10 acre pieces. But definitely this year, it's been a good start to the new year, and the spring market I feel has come early.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been seeing a lot of folks that were kind of on the sidelines, just waiting to see kind of the bottom of the interest rate situation that was happening, right? So December we had that hold, January we had a hold, and then just recently, in the last couple of months, we've had a little bit more positive sentiment towards, the rates are going to be settling or at least going a little bit lower.
That's right.
Slowly. But it just feels like, that doomsday hole, going far as possible in the rates is not happening anymore.
Yeah, I think the buyers that want to buy, they know it's probably the prices have come down to where they know they're not going to go down any further. So that's the first thing. That's one thing a buyer wants to buy at the lowest point.
Right.
And then the second thing is they're getting better 5-year fixed terms right now. And that will get better over the year as interest rates come down. And they also know that, there's going to be anywhere from 0.5 point to potentially 1% that's going to come down till the end of 2024. And when that happens, more people tend to come in the market, people's affordability goes higher, and then what tends to happen is prices start to come up. So definitely people are buyers are taking advantage and jumping into the market now. And they actually started, I think, second week of January. That spring market came much, much earlier than we anticipated. And I think that's going to continue. I think it's going to continue all throughout March. We're seeing multiple offers on anything under $3.5 million. So anything that's priced right for the product, just because it's 3.5, there's stuff that's still overpriced. But if there's enough value on that property that justifies anything under 3.5, we are seeing buyers jump on it quickly. And because they know those will potentially jump up anywhere from minimum 5 to maybe 10% by the end of this year.
Yeah, it seems to be still favoring the buyers, though, overall, the market itself.
Definitely.
Right?
It is still a buyer's market. But what I have noticed, as much as it is it is a buyer's market, there's still not much good inventory. And, you and I have just been, last 3-4 weeks, we have been so busy meeting with sellers that have been also sitting on the sidelines. And they're starting to list. So I think inventory will come, but definitely if you're in the market to purchase, now is definitely the time. And again, when things get hotter, you're competing more, you don't get favorable terms. And with that also creates pretty much chaos over when it comes closer to when those interest rates are going to start coming down.
Yeah, and even on the seller side, it is something that they are seeing as well. They're noticing that the buyers are coming back in, and
Yeah.
they're like, you know what, this is the opportunity to actually step into the playing field and list our property and get a fair price,
Yes.
right? So on the buyer side, they're kind of thinking, you know what, this is the right time to get a good deal because
Yes.
the rates can be figured out later down the road, right? So
What I've noticed is even aside from just the price point as of a deal, most people need to sell something in order to buy. I'm not saying all, but there's a good handful. When the market was hot, sellers were not entertaining subject to sale. Sellers were not entertaining extensions. Right now, the sellers are understanding that you have to accommodate a buyer to exit the equity that they're currently in order to put a hefty down payment to get financing. So it's for a buyer that wants a dream acreage, you will get favorable. Most likely, you will get favorable terms. So it is an opportunity to make this smooth transition rather than gambling and trying to buy something and then try selling after, or trying to sell within the subject period, right? So it's for a buyer that really wants to purchase. And I think we actually said this in our year-end update, that you got like 60 days to get in the market. And now we're seeing that it's here, right?
Absolutely. Now that kind of leads me down into some of the changes that BC is implementing as well.
Yeah.
We're seeing that anti-flipping tax that's coming pretty soon, if it's not already been implemented. But I noticed there is a rumor saying that basically it's not applicable to farms now.
Correct.
Maybe you can elaborate on that one.
With the market being so, I think the BC government also knows that, look, the market is going to get hot again. So their goal is to slow it down. So with the bill and the anti-flipping tax, they want to eliminate a big chunk of buyers out of the market. And those buyers are the ones that get in and get out. They're not really the people that want to hold long term. I feel that most of those people are very minimal to begin with. And I think the provincial government, I think they take one negative thing and they blow it up out of proportion when it's literally probably less than 1 to 2% of the buyer pool. And that's gonna take in effect of January of 2025. So if you buy a property in 2024, you have to wait 2 years before you sell it if you don't want to get hit with 20% tax. I believe it's 20% in the first year, and then it's a prorated rate over the last year. So the further you go to the end of year 2, it'll go to 0, but it's at end of year 1, it's still 20%. So that is going to eliminate some buyers. But I would say more on the residential, the development, the more of the buying, sell, flipping side of things. I don't think it's going to affect farmland at all, because most buyers, as you and I work with, a lot of our buyers, people are buying to hold long term. These are legacy properties. They are generational properties. They're their dream home properties, right?
It's a lifestyle.
It's a lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
So it's very rare you'll see them sell in about 2 years, but that now enforcing real buyers to come to the table. The good thing is I've been selling farmland for 15 years. I actually don't work with any flippers. So even in all our contracts, we've never allowed flipping. I just don't like it. I don't like the concept of it. I think it's unfair to the sellers that we represent. And it's something that I just was never a fan of. I think they probably should have brought it in 10 years ago. It is a great thing, but with every action, there's a reaction. And I think there's going to be a negative consequence in the development sector. Plus it is flipping, but there is a sector where there's buyers that buy and give added value to a property and then sell it. So, for example, you might get somebody that is buying a rental project. They're taking a house that's outdated, doesn't have, and it's livable, but it's not. It's going to cost a lot of money for renovations. Now, the average buyer that will probably buy that end product doesn't have that hard cash to do the renovation. Could be anywhere from $50,000 to $200,000. So the sector that we're going to disappear for the next 2 years is that a buyer's can't buy a property, renovate it, and clean it up and make it beautiful and then resell it because they're going to get hit with the 20%. But now a buyer that wants that type of product, there's going to be less of them for sale.
Yeah.
Like I don't consider those people as flippers, or I consider those people as investors but those same investors are adding value. I think if someone's adding a value to a property, I think it should have been exempt for them. Right. Speaking of exemptions, there are exemptions to this.
Okay.
So I think if you're going through a divorce, some sort of health issue, anything that creates some sort of hardship that's out of the control, the challenge we're going to see is who's monitoring that, who's going to make that decision, which form of government is going to say, hey, yeah, we agree with that. Yes, you don't have to pay that 20%. Right. So these are the way the NDP works. They did this the same thing with when they created the farming rule, saying, 5,400 square feet maximum size across BC.
Yeah.
They're doing the same thing with all three of these new other rules. No flipping tax all across BC. No Airbnb all across BC. No higher density all across BC. But every single municipality, it's going to play a different factor and in a different category. So I think they just say it, but they don't actually. So they did this with the farming rule. They're going to say it, they're going to implement it. Hardship and a lot of things are going to start happening where they're going to look at it like, maybe we need to retract this part of it out. Yeah. And then they're going to refine it over a couple of years. I don't think that they're going to take it away. I think the flipping tax will now stay forever. But amendments will be made because they're going to slowly start realizing, hey, we do need investors. We need investors to update some of these properties. You need investors to buy pre-sales. Yeah. A developer is building a high-rise. They have to pre-sell a certain percentage of their high-rise of development before the bank will give them financing to start building.
Right.
If the investor is eliminated, how many end users are going to go give a deposit, wait 3 to 4 years for their end product, and then move in? No, these investors come in, get these pre-sales, allow the developer to quickly build up that building, and then these investors either A, complete on them and hold them as an investment and rent them out, or B, they sell them for a small profit. But what it did was it allowed that developer to go ahead and start developing right away, and then he can move on to the next tower. Now what's going to happen, something that would have pre-sold in a year, a product or a tower, now might take 2 to 3 years. So that same one tower that should have been built faster might, instead of taking 3-4 years to build, might take 6, 7, 8 years to build. Because the pre-sale part, it's going to take longer to find that end user.
Yeah, I don't think this will apply specifically to farms anyways. I mean, even if they had actually said that farms are now also you can't flip, there's usually a reason why somebody's selling a farm. Usually it's having to do with one of those serious situations anyways. Correct. Right? So it would have been excluded. The other thing is...
So, sorry to interrupt. So the farmland is exempt, but I believe it's not a house and acreage is not exempt.
Oh, okay.
So it's the same thing as the foreign buyer tax.
Right.
Foreign buyer tax does not apply if you are a bona fide farmer and it has farming practice. So just because you're an acreage on ALR property, you're not allowed to a foreign buyer can't just buy a 5-acre with a house. It has to have farming. And they'll get taxed on the home portion at 20%. So here, I believe when they do roll out these new rules for the farm side of things, the flipping, if it's a bona fide farm, it will not apply. But if it's a house in acreage on ALR properties, it will, because now they don't have farm status, they're not bona fide farmers, they're not registered as a farmer. It'll be now fall under residential rules.
Interesting, because I'm also thinking of it because they say reserves are excluded in agricultural land reserve ALR properties. I would question if that's also a loophole
But
there,
remember, we always have that challenge: is
yeah,
are ALR properties commercial or are they residential? And we know they're both, depending on what that individual is doing on that property, right? So I think they're going to identify it like that. And again, these rules are just thrown out there.
Yeah, blanket.
They blanket it. And it's more of a political, because they know elections are coming up. They want to look very. The party wants to really show that they are helping the pricing situation, the inventory situation, and it does help. Not saying it doesn't help, but what I also know is that there's going to be a negative consequence in certain sectors that's going to affect this. But once they start realizing it, they'll make exemptions along the way. They'll hit it hard and then retract over the years as they start realizing, okay, we are not building more houses because of this, or hey, you know what I mean? They really want to get housing. Their biggest objective here with the anti-flipping is they want real people, end users moving into these properties. They don't want to use real estate as an investment tool anymore. Yeah, that's
Awesome.
their goal.
Yeah, it's good to hear too, because I mean, that's obviously our market. It's not like somebody's going to come into farms now for flipping, because the reality is, yes, those older homes are kind of run down, but usually somebody will buy that to build their dream home or something like that, right? It's not something that you want to renovate and flip it and sell. There's just no point to it.
There's no margin.
Yeah.
And there never was. Like for farmland, most people that renovate a house renovate to live. And say if we ever do see someone selling within a 2-year period, something went wrong.
That's right.
Yeah, like one of those exemptions are gonna hit, right?
Yeah.
It's either a divorce, financial issue, health problem, something.
Yeah. And sometimes people just, they realize it's not for them.
Or that too.
Sometimes it's just not for them.
Yeah.
And
but I don't know if that's going to be an exemption.
I think it would be, because it's still farms, right? Yeah. So I mean, in that situation, if you can't sustain yourself from the farm and you thought you could, I think that's a financial hardship as well, right? That's an issue.
Well, this is what's going to come up, right? And then it's going to be, the underlying factor is going to be like, well, who's going to make these decisions then?
Yeah.
Who's the person behind the desk saying agree or disagree?
That's right.
Right.
Now, in terms of income, there's another change that's coming about. Airbnb.
Yes.
Being banned, right?
So, the anti-flipping tax is going to take an effect on January 1st, 2025. Now, the Airbnb, I think, is taking effect in May. Yes, in May.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So May of this year. Again, they put it out there. They blanketed it. Still, they have some rules and regulations that are coming out of this. They have not been defined yet. There's actually some smaller municipalities that want to opt out of it. Like they're saying, no, Airbnb is phenomenal for us. The smaller towns, even though they're above. Right. So I think the exemption states that if you're under 5,000 population, or is it 10,000? They're exempt. But what's going to happen is there's some that are above that, and they're saying, no, Airbnb is great. We have workers that come here from out of town that need temporary housing. We've got nurses that need temporary housing, and so on and so forth, right? So now Airbnb, you're not allowed to have your whole house as an Airbnb, like multiple suites and things like that, like how some people were doing. They state that you can only have an Airbnb in your primary residence, but only one. So if you've got 2 basement suites, you can only use it as only one Airbnb. Okay. So on farmland, Airbnb is also exempt, but I think it's because it's based on an ad that you put up on Airbnb. I think you're still only going to be allowed one thing on that farm that can be Airbnb. Either it's a cottage, a mobile home, a side suite, or the entire house. Well, if it wouldn't be the entire house because that would be your principal residence,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, but again, the Airbnb, it did take a lot. I think they were saying, I think the number was like 16,000 Airbnbs in BC.
Yeah.
But if you spread that all over BC, it's not much. But now there's going to be a negative effect to this. Hotel prices are already so expensive. What do you think is going to happen to hotel prices? If it's expensive, it's going to be almost like double.
Yeah.
Right?
Wow.
So there's all these factors that they're not taking into effect. Something that they just announced was the FIFA. FIFA is coming to,
Oh, yes.
was it 2026?
I want to say 6, yeah.
Where are you housing all these people?
Yeah, yeah.
If you're going to ban Airbnb, where are you going to house all of this entire population? And we're supposed to highlight BC at this point. Like, we're going to shine. FIFA is going to bring in a lot of tourists. They can't build hotels that fast. Like, even if they approve 10 hotels today, there's no way they're going to build them that fast.
Yeah, that's huge. One thing I noticed for the farms aspect of it, secondary homes that are 967 square feet will be ideal for Airbnb in this situation.
Yes,
then,
it
right?
would be,
Because
the second, or
secondary
the mobile
residence,
home, or, yeah.
Mobile home, secondary residence, whatever it is.
Mhm.
That's going to be ideal. I think that yeah, we'll see how that goes. I mean, we're going to find out pretty quickly, I guess.
And again, I think they're going to do the same thing. They've blanketed it across BC. They're going to roll it out. There's going to be problems, challenges, and then there's going to be amendments. And it's unfortunate because BC, the taxpayer, is going to have to take the hit for that process because these things are not thought out through. They just say it out there and not give defined guidelines. And then they just look really good to the public because elections are coming. They're going to roll it out. There's going to be a lot of problems and the BC taxpayer is going to have to pay for it. And then they're going to amend and then they're going to fix it.
Now, do you think it's going to be overwhelmingly positive for the renter side of things? I mean, obviously, it
Definitely,
seems to be like the solution.
that I do agree with. Having more, there needs to be more available rents so we can stabilize rental rates or even bring down rental rates. But the only thing that's going to fix that is inventory.
Yeah.
Like all of these new shiny laws that they're coming up with to make themselves look phenomenal doesn't still solve the underlying issue. And the underlying issue is we need more housing. Increase density, so we'll get to the density part. Increase density, allow developers to develop quicker, get them their permits, let them go, let them build.
Yeah, and on that note, I mean, they did just implement digital permits. That's something that's just been implemented, at least in Abbotsford for sure.
Yeah,
But,
well, I think a lot of the municipalities, and from what I've been hearing from a lot of my clients, so when I applied to build my house, it took me 9 months for waiting to get my building permit for one house.
yeah,
I've heard that all the municipalities are starting to speed that up.
okay,
Yeah, which is good.
yeah,
And I think what's happening is BC is going to be funding more municipalities for they'll give them more money based on the more density, how fast they can increase density, right?
right,
But Airbnb rule overall, there's the pros and the cons, right? Definitely we needed some sort of restriction, some sort of guideline. But at the same time, just saying no Airbnbs is not going to be the solution, right?
awesome. And then now we're really getting into the density side of things. That's Bill
Yeah.
44, was it? And
Yeah.
how do you feel about that one? And it's not going to really affect us on the farm side. However, for generally,
But the question that needs to be asked, we are going to try to create new density. We want to create more density. We're going to cram the existing areas of population to create more density. Agreed, we need more housing. So anyone that has a residential subdivision might get a townhouse subdivision. A townhouse or a residential might get a duplex or row homes or smaller. A townhouse site might turn into a condo site. A condo site might turn into a mid-rise. Mid-rise might turn into a high-rise. I agree with that. Let's beef things up. Let's get more housing. Let's go. But you've got this ALR where the same government made a big stink that you cannot build big houses when there's multi-generational people living there. They've only allowed 2 houses on a 5-acre farm, 10-acre farm, 20-acre farm, 100-acre farm. So those same families that are multi-generational, you want them to go and buy more houses. When you have this much land and it's just a small footprint that they're really disturbing, you are not allowing more farmers to build more houses on their farm for their families. So you come out with this new density law to please the public. You restricted these big houses to please the public, but it's contradicting. So the farm one is contradicting this density one. So should the house size rule plus how many homes you can build on a farm, should that not be revisited?
And it's funny because that was just revisited very recently, so I don't imagine it's going to be for a while still.
But it should be.
But it should be.
If I've always said the way they should do the housing on farmland, and it's very easy. They make it so complicated because they blanketed all of BC in one aspect. One farm, 5,400 square foot house, second residence, 980 square feet. Do it on a sliding scale. Got 5 acres, 5,400 square feet, plus a 980 square foot mobile. 5 to 10 acres, a different situation. 10 to 20 acres, allow them 5,400 or a 5,400 and a 2,500 square foot house. 20 to 40 acres, allow them 3 houses. 40 to 100 acre parcel, allow them 4 or 5 houses. Like, you've got all of this land, and you've got, say, 500,000-600,000 titles across BC. Allow farmers to build more housing for their children. They'll actually want to keep these farms in their families and generational. Right? Instead of pushing farmers away, let's allow them to create more density on farmland. And the density play does make sense. We do need it. We need more housing. We need to control rent. And that is the only way that's going to fix all of these problems, is get density, get building, allow more housing, control rents. What's going to affect is public transit, our roads and infrastructure. We can't sustain it. Public schools, that is going to get affected a lot. We've already got a big problem with portables. When you're densifying an area and you've got that many more kids, that many more families moving in, you need schools. So that's going to be a big problem.
The parking, I can't even imagine it, because we're looking at situations right now where parking is atrocious.
Yes.
In residential
In
areas.
all residential neighborhoods.
And I can't imagine doubling it. You know,
It might be, we're talking triple.
Yeah.
So you're going to have some challenges there. And I think they will overcome them.
Yeah, the trains that are being added,
I think transit. I think transit. They've already they are addressing as they go. What I'm fearing is schools and hospitals. Those two things are already, and we haven't even started this thing. Those two situations are really, really poor. BC's hospitals are probably some of the worst hospitals. Waiting list, beds availability. And I'm speaking based on Surrey Langley. Man, it's pretty bad. It's pretty horrible.
And that's going to affect every single person across the board, regardless.
Yep. You go. I went to the hospital a couple of weeks ago I had to meet somebody there, and right when I walked in the emergency, outside of emergency, not the waiting area, but inside, so you can tell they've been admitted. Man, there must have been like 40 people sitting there. Wow. And I'm just looking, I'm shaking my head like, this is crazy. And what do you think is going to happen when population gets even worse? Now, where does the funding come from for hospitals? Through provincial. And provincial, if you look at what they've done, they've got one of the biggest deficits right now ever in BC history, because they're spending money like it's nothing, but I don't think they're spending it in the right spots. Right? So, like, there's going to be the landscape, BC landscape is going to be very different here in the next 5-10 years. And I think that's why, in my opinion, you've got high density, you're going to have a lot of cluster in residential. What I know that's going to happen is anything that's an acre or above in size, values are going to skyrocket over the next 10 years. Because anybody that is, I'm going to say, middle to upper class, financially, just well-to-do, they're not going to want to live in the city. Where are they going to want to go? They're going to want to go to out a little bit further out. They're going to want more privacy. They're going to want less traffic. They're going to look at these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, up to 10 acres, and they're going to build a home, and they're going to want an estate. But they're going to be in such demand in the future. And those are the buyers that are going to come by because they can afford that. And in the city, it's just going to get clustered. Right? A perfect example, a little bit far-fetched, but you know what? 20, 30, 40, 50 years, we might be there. You look at what New York is, and you look at what the Hamptons are. You've got city living, and then you've got acreage living. And who are all the people that are buying out there, right? And that's what you're going to start seeing. You're going to see these massive cities getting much bigger, much more populated, and then you're going to see all the ALR properties and plus 1 acres that are in Langley, Abbotsford, Mission, Maple Ridge, Chilliwack. People are going to start moving out there because they're financially well off that they can afford it. They can build their dream home estate, and they're not going to be living in what's going to be chaotic.
I think that is inevitable. That's
No, that is going to happen. I can guarantee it.
That's right.
It's when. It's not if. And I think buying acreage is going to be we see it now. It is a luxury product.
It is the new luxury.
It is the new luxury. Land is the new luxury locally. It's not just a farm you're buying. You're buying a piece of acreage which is going to be very, very hard and far-fetched to ever obtain. Right?
And just the infrastructure in just South BC that we're seeing right now, how much it's growing.
Because of the population.
There's really nowhere to go. Like, I mean, if you're going to go north, there's
mountains.
Not much options, right? So you're kind of restricted with the mountains, the geography of it.
You go south, you've got the border. You go west, we've got the ocean. You go east is your only option. But if you look at the mass majority of population, they don't want to pass Chilliwack. Then you've got the smaller towns. You've got your Merritts, the Vernons, the Kamloops, the Kelownas, and they are growing too. Don't get me wrong, they're growing, but the people that are going there and wanting to live there and grow there are a lot of the retirees that are selling out here in the Valley and Greater Vancouver, and they're going out that way.
And I mean, other than Kelowna, Kelowna matches Abbotsford's population.
Yes, Kelowna is booming. Yes,
it's booming, right? Other than that, the other ones around them, they're kind of just.
Well, let's look at Kelowna. Who's the biggest buyer pool there? Investors. A lot of investors invested into Kelowna in the last 10 years. They're not going to invest there anymore. What's the biggest demand in Kelowna? It's known as the spot to go for a short getaway. Just for people in the Valley, Greater Vancouver. You always go to Kelowna.
Right.
Where do they stay? Stay in Airbnbs. Right? Like, you can see what's going to happen to these smaller towns of how much money used to come there for the small businesses there. My wife and I, we went to Sparkling Hill. We drove and we went to the Cactus Club in Vernon. I was actually surprised they had a Cactus Club in Vernon. But we went there and I was surprised how much it's been developed. And I could see myself going there, staying in an Airbnb. It's so quiet, it's peaceful, it's private, it's a small getaway that's close enough to home, right? Now you start taking a lot of as an investor, I would have maybe invested there.
Mhm.
But now, will you invest there for short term? You wouldn't.
Mhm.
So any investment that is going to be done in real estate has to be thought out long term.
Do you think the rental market is actually going to get more expensive or less expensive with all these changes? Because I feel like,
You know what it is? I think if they can really ramp up this density thing, I can see rental rates really flatline, come down, and stabilize.
okay,
Right?
yeah.
And I know they're, like I think the federal election is going to play a big part on how this all plays out,
Mhm.
because if the new federal government, whoever comes in, it's either going to be conservatives or liberal. Those are the two that are the highest ranked, that are going to be going against each other. They're going to have their own immigration policies,
Yeah.
and if I think liberals are quite open, bringing in a lot of people, but they've kind of realized that they have to tone that down, and they have.
Yeah.
Conservatives are known to not just open the floodgates for immigration.
And I mean, one of the recent announcements that we haven't mentioned yet is that there was a pause on immigration for
Yeah.
students and whatnot for, I think it was a couple of years, they said, or something along
Yeah,
those lines.
I think there was. I forget the timeline.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
students, yes.
There was a bit of a pause.
So you're gonna see immigration revisited.
Yeah,
Not like it's not gonna stop,
yeah.
but it's going to be revisited and maybe modified and maybe more controlled, which then therefore will allow density to go, more units available, which therefore will hopefully bring down rental rates and stabilize rental rates, right? So the BC landscape of real estate, I believe, is changing. And I think when you're thinking about buying real estate, you need to think long term. And you need to think like, what's the purpose? And I think in a few, even our market updates, I've mentioned purpose. Buying real estate now has to have a long-term vision and purpose.
Yeah.
And if you go with that mindset, I think you're going to do phenomenal. But if you think that you can walk in and buy something and then sell it for a quick buck, you won't be able to. They're eliminating speculation, and that's what I like about the flipping tax is those types of people that ruin the market are going to disappear. Real estate's meant for holding, investing, cash flowing, providing housing, and it's good for that.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, we're in a good spot. We're in BC ourselves, and it's
we are
only
blessed.
set to grow.
We are blessed to live in such a beautiful province. Things are going to change every 5, 10, 15, 20 years. I hope that when they do change these things, they really get a good committee or a good panel before making these decisions and really looking at some of the pros and cons and see if they can modify. And who knows, maybe I'm wrong, and maybe this is the best way. Apply it to everything, see where the holes and gaps are, and then modify as they go. And which is not wrong either, right?
Yeah, at least they're moving forward and they're
trying.
trying.
At least they will make changes along the way, right? Like some of our clients, some people have applied to build 2 houses on farmland, and they were approved. But when they rolled out that rule, they were hard no. It's not going to happen.
Well, that pretty much sums up those 3 changes, the primary changes that we're expecting coming up pretty quickly here. We're in the spring market here right now. I know we're seeing quite a bit of action, a lot of new listings coming up in the next few weeks here.
Yes, we've been busy.
Just in the pipeline. And I don't know, last words for what we're expecting here in this spring market. I feel like it's going to be a good one for sure.
I personally think if you are thinking about buying acreage anytime this year, you need to buy as soon as possible. And then this price point is one factor. The second factor is really you get your terms. Like sellers are accommodating to terms, which is huge. You need to sell one property, seller will give you that time to sell that one property. Most sellers will. And if you're a seller and you're looking to exit this year, I've always said, either March, springtime is going to be the right time, or if you can wait until June, until we kind of see where these interest rates head, that might be the next spike of anticipation and the market being much better. These are your two windows.
Yeah.
The challenge with June, I've really given a lot of thought to is that the election is going to be in November. So even if you list in June, you may only have a selling window of about 4 or 5 months, maybe actually probably less than that.
Yeah.
You may only have 2 to 3 months of a window to sell. Most historically, buyers tend to pause buying in any sort of big election.
That's a huge point.
That is a huge point. So, but then it will ramp up in the spring. So if you're a seller out there and you are on the fence of selling, and you cannot wait till June, list your properties now, price them correctly. If you can wait till June, again, great. Reevaluate your properties with your realtors and price them correctly. They will move.
Yeah.
Then if you miss that June deadline, I would highly, highly recommend wait till spring of 2025. Like these are your 3 windows to sell. And everyone has their own holding power. Everyone has their own family goals and reasons of why they want to sell. And depending on your wait time, I would take those 3 times into consideration.
Awesome, Nav. That's a lot of information in one podcast here. We got a lot of nuggets in there, right? So we'll leave it with that. And off to the next one.
Awesome.